Hey, English learners. Welcome back to Leap English Podcast by Mr. English Fluent Tutor. I'm Anna, and as always, I'm joined by Abel.
Hello, everyone, and hello, Anna. It is always a pleasure to sit down and practice English together. I truly love these conversations because they feel so real and so warm. Every time we record, I feel like we are just having a lovely chat with friends over a warm cup of tea.
That is exactly the feeling we always want to create here, Abel. And speaking of feelings, before we dive into today's chat, let me ask you something personal and very simple. Just answer from your heart, okay?
Go right ahead, Anna. You know I'm always ready to share. Ask me anything, and I will do my best to give you an honest answer. That is what this podcast is all about, right?
What comes to your mind when you hear the words talking about your feelings? Just your first honest thought. Do not think too hard. Just say what naturally comes up for you when you imagine that situation in daily life.
Honestly, Anna, my first thought is that it sounds really awkward and a little bit overwhelming. I always imagine that to talk about my feelings properly, I need to use big, complicated psychological words. And I also worry that sharing my sadness or my stress makes me look weak to other people around me.
Oh, Abel, I'm so glad you said that because I think so many of our listeners feel exactly the same way. But I want to gently correct that idea right now. Talking about your feelings does not mean you need complicated words or a psychology degree. It simply means using clear, simple, everyday words to say how you are right now.
Wait, really? So it is not about using perfect, fancy vocabulary at all? That actually surprises me a little, Anna. I always assumed that to express emotions properly, especially in English, you needed to sound very educated and very precise. Can you explain that a little more?
Absolutely, and it's such an important point. When you talk about your emotions, you are really doing three beautiful things. You're expressing your current state so people understand you, you're releasing pressure from inside so you feel lighter and calmer inside, and you're connecting warmly with the people who care about you.
Wow. Okay, when you put it that way, it actually sounds really natural and even a little bit beautiful. It's not a performance or an exam, it's just honest human sharing. I think I was looking at it the completely wrong way all along, and that's a really freeing realization.
Exactly, Abel, and that realization is the first step. Now I want our wonderful listeners to take a slow, comfortable breath right now and just think for one moment about the last time they felt something strongly but did not know how to say it in English. We're going to help with that today.
I love that. And I think that's such a relatable experience for every language learner out there. You feel something deeply inside, but the words just don't come. And then you feel frustrated on top of the original feeling, which makes everything twice as heavy. It's a real challenge.
That is such a perfect way to describe it, Abel. And that actually leads me to our first idea I want to share today. I like to call it the water bottle analogy, and it's one of the simplest and most powerful ways to understand why talking about feelings truly matters in daily life.
Oh, I love a good analogy, Anna. Please go ahead. I'm already curious about this one. You always find the most creative and helpful ways to explain things, and I think our listeners are going to enjoy this one very much.
So imagine that your heart, your emotional self, is like a fresh bottle of water. Every day, you experience different feelings. You feel frustration at work, you feel worry about a test, you feel sadness about something a friend said, and all of those feelings go inside the bottle.
Okay, I can picture that really clearly. The feelings are like the water filling up the bottle little by little throughout the day. And I suppose if you never open the bottle, the pressure just keeps building up inside, right? That's a simple but really effective image.
Yes, exactly right. When you trap your frustration, your worry, and your sadness inside without talking about them, the pressure inside that bottle grows and grows. And eventually, what happens to any sealed container that's too full? It bursts open in a way that's messy and uncomfortable for everyone.
Oh, wow, that is so true and so relatable. I've definitely had those moments where I kept everything inside for too long, and then suddenly I said something sharp or I got unreasonably upset over something very small. And looking back, I realized the bottle had simply been too full for too long.
And that's a perfectly human experience, Abel. But here's the beautiful part of the analogy. When you open the lid of that bottle just a little, when you talk about one feeling, even in a small, simple way, a little water flows out, the pressure drops, and suddenly you feel lighter and calmer inside.
That makes so much sense, Anna. And what I love about that image is that you don't need to pour out the entire bottle all at once. You don't need to share every single feeling in one long, emotional speech. Just a little release through honest words is enough to make a real difference.
Precisely, and that's such an important point for our beginner listeners especially. You don't need to say everything perfectly, you just need to open the lid a little. Even saying something as simple as, "I feel tired today," or "I'm a little stressed right now," is enough to start that release.
That's genuinely reassuring to hear, and it brings up something I want to share with our listeners. The first word I want to review from today's podcast is the word emotion itself. Anna, can you give us a simple, clean definition of that word for our beginner friends who might be hearing it for the first time?
Of course, an emotion is simply a feeling that you experience inside your body and your mind. It can be happiness, sadness, fear, excitement, or love. Emotions are completely natural, and every human being on this planet experiences them every single day without exception. They're part of what makes us human.
And a simple daily life example sentence for emotion could be something like this. After watching that kind movie, I felt a very strong emotion of happiness and warmth. That is a natural, easy sentence that any beginner can understand and even practice saying out loud right now.
I love that example. And speaking of things that can sometimes feel a little scary, I want to move to our next big idea. This one is about the fear of sharing, because a lot of people understand that talking about feelings helps, but they still hesitate. And I have a beautiful analogy for that too.
Oh, I'm definitely one of those people who hesitates, Anna. Even when I know that sharing would help, there's always this little voice inside that says, what if the other person judges me? What if they think I'm being too sensitive or too emotional? That feels very real and very common.
That fear is incredibly common, Abel, and you just described it perfectly. So think of it this way. Imagine you are standing in a room that has two windows. One window has heavy, cloudy, gray curtains. The other window opens onto a beautiful green garden full of sunlight and gentle warmth.
I can picture that room really clearly. The cloudy window sounds a bit gloomy and heavy, and the green garden window sounds peaceful and inviting. I'm guessing the two windows represent two different ways of looking at the same situation, and that is a really clever way to show it.
Exactly right. The cloudy window is the window of fear and assumption. When you look through it, you assume the worst. You tell yourself that if you share your feelings with a friend, they will judge you. They will think less of you. They will feel burdened or uncomfortable by your honesty.
Oh, wow. And that cloudy thinking is so destructive, is it not? Because it keeps you isolated and silent, even when the people around you actually want to help and support you. I think I have looked through that cloudy window far too many times in my life, honestly.
Most of us have, Abel, and there's no shame in that at all. But now shift your gaze to the green garden window. Through that window, you see the reality that honest sharing actually creates trust. It tells your friend or your family member that you value them enough to be open with them.
That makes so much sense, Anna. And it actually creates a deeper connection, right? Because when you're honest about how you feel, the other person often feels safe enough to be honest too. It becomes a two-way exchange of warmth and genuine human understanding between people who care.
Beautifully said, Abel. And this brings us perfectly to our second word of the day, which is the word overwhelmed. It is such an important word for emotional conversations because so many learners feel this way but do not know the English word for it. So let's break it down simply.
Yes, please. I use this feeling all the time, but I love having the exact right word for it. Can you define overwhelmed in the simplest possible way for our listeners, Anna? Something they can remember easily and use starting today in their real daily conversations with people.
Of course, when you feel overwhelmed, you feel like there is simply too much happening at once. Too many tasks, too many worries, too many emotions all at the same time. Your mind feels full and heavy, like a table piled with too many heavy things that you cannot carry all at once.
And an example sentence for overwhelmed could be this. I felt overwhelmed at work today because there were so many emails and meetings and deadlines all happening at the same time. That is a sentence that I think almost every adult can immediately connect with from their own daily experience.
That is such a relatable sentence, Abel, and I think our listeners are nodding along right now. And here's a little moment for our listeners. Think about the last time you felt overwhelmed. Can you put that feeling into even one simple English sentence right now? Try it quietly to yourself. Just one sentence.
I love that gentle challenge for the listeners, Anna. And thinking about overwhelm brings me to something I personally struggle with. Sometimes when I feel overwhelmed or sad, I don't know where to start when it comes to actually talking about it. It feels like such a big, tangled knot to untangle.
Oh, Abel, that is such a perfect description of how it feels, a tangled knot. And I have a beautiful little analogy for exactly that feeling. I like to think about it as stepping stones across a river. You don't jump from one side of the river to the other in one giant leap.
Right, that would be impossible and honestly a little bit terrifying. So the stepping stones represent small, manageable steps toward talking about your feelings? I love that idea because it immediately removes the pressure of having to express everything perfectly or completely all at once. Small steps feel so much more achievable.
Exactly. And here's the practical version of that analogy. Think of each stepping stone as a small 10-minute coin of emotional practice. You spend just 10 minutes doing one small emotional thing. Maybe you say out loud that you feel tired. Maybe you write down one feeling in a simple notebook. Maybe you just pause and breathe quietly.
Oh, wow. I really love the idea of pocket coins of emotional practice. That makes it feel so light and so doable. You're not asking someone to take a huge emotional leap. You're just asking them to spend one small coin of time and attention on how they're feeling inside. That's so gentle.
And those coins add up over time, Abel. Every stone you step on takes you a little further across the river. And one day you look back and realize that you have crossed from someone who struggled to name a single feeling to someone who can have a warm, honest, emotional conversation with ease.
That honestly gives me so much hope, Anna, because sometimes the emotional journey feels incredibly long and far away, but thinking about it as coins and stepping stones makes it feel close and achievable, and I think that hopeful feeling is so important for our listeners who are just starting this practice.
Absolutely. And this brings us to our third vocabulary word of the day, which is the word comfortable, because the goal of all of this emotional practice is not to become a perfect emotional speaker overnight. The goal is simply to feel more comfortable expressing yourself day by day.
I like that framing so much, Anna. Comfortable is exactly the right word and the right goal. And for our listeners who might not know this word yet, can you give a simple, clear definition, something that makes the meaning immediately obvious and easy to remember for everyday use?
Of course, when something is comfortable, it feels easy, relaxed, and safe. It doesn't feel scary or forced. For example, feeling comfortable in a conversation means you don't feel nervous or worried about what you're saying. You feel at ease, like sitting in your favorite soft chair at home.
And a great example sentence could be this. I'm starting to feel more comfortable talking about my feelings in English because I practice a little bit every single day. I love that sentence because it actually captures the journey that our listeners are on right now in this very episode.
That is a wonderful sentence, Abel, and actually it connects perfectly to the next big idea I want to share, which is about the language we use when we talk about feelings. Because sometimes learners make things so much harder than they need to be by reaching for complicated words when simple ones work perfectly.
Oh, I'm definitely guilty of that, Anna. I sometimes think that if I use a very long or very sophisticated word, it shows that I'm a serious and intelligent speaker. But you know what? Most of the time, a simple and clear word actually communicates so much more effectively than a complicated one.
Beautifully said, Abel, and that is the heart of our next analogy, which I call the clean knife analogy. Imagine two knives in a kitchen. One is old, dull, and covered in rust. Cutting with it is slow, messy, and frustrating. The other is clean, sharp, and precise. It cuts smoothly and clearly every time.
Okay, I can picture that comparison perfectly, and I can already feel where this is going. The clean, sharp knife represents clear, direct emotional words, right? Words that cut straight to the point, without confusion or misunderstanding. And the dull, rusty knife is the complicated, confusing language we sometimes hide behind.
Precisely right, and you explained it so well, Abel. When you feel upset or anxious or disappointed, hiding behind long, complicated excuses or vague, confusing sentences is like using that dull, rusty knife. It makes communication messy. But choosing a clean, clear emotional word cuts through the misunderstanding instantly and cleanly.
So instead of saying something like, there's a certain kind of internal pressure that I am experiencing due to various situational factors, you could simply say, I feel anxious right now. And that one clean sentence does the job so much better and so much more honestly. Simple is truly powerful.
Yes, and that is such a perfect example, Abel. Clean language, clear feelings. And that brings us to our fourth vocabulary word of the day, which is the word express. Because expressing is the action at the heart of everything we are talking about today. It is the bridge between what you feel inside and what others can understand.
I think express is such an important word for language learners, especially because it applies to so many different situations. Can you give a simple, beginner-friendly definition of the word express, Anna? Just a clear, short explanation that our listeners can hold on to and use as a reference point.
Of course. To express something means to show or share what is inside you using words, actions, writing, or art. When you express a feeling, you take something from the inside of your heart and you put it into a form that another person can see, hear, or understand. It is a beautiful and brave act.
And a simple sentence using express could be this. It took me a long time to learn how to express my feelings clearly, but now I practice every day, and it feels much more natural. I think that is a sentence our listeners can truly own and say as their own personal truth right now.
I absolutely love that sentence, Abel. And you know, talking about expressing feelings naturally brings up a challenge that I know so many of our listeners face every single day. Sometimes the inner voice inside your head is not very kind or encouraging when it comes to speaking about emotions in English.
Oh, wow. Yes, that inner voice can be so harsh sometimes. I know my own inner voice very well. It often says things like, you cannot explain your emotions properly in English. Your vocabulary is not good enough. Your grammar is wrong. Other people will not understand what you're trying to say. It is exhausting.
Abel, I am so glad you shared that because it is a feeling that is shared by millions of English learners around the world. And I want to introduce a tiny magical word that completely transforms that inner voice from a critic into a cheerleader. Are you ready for the magic word?
I am absolutely ready, Anna. I love the idea of a magic word that changes the whole feeling of something. Please tell me what it is. I have a feeling it's going to be something beautifully simple, because the best and most powerful things in language usually are the simplest ones.
The magic word is yet. Just three little letters, yet. When your inner voice says, I cannot express my emotions properly in English, you simply add the word yet to the end of that sentence. I cannot express my emotions properly in English yet. Can you feel how that tiny word changes everything?
Oh, wow, Anna, that is genuinely powerful. I cannot express my emotions yet. It transforms the statement from a permanent closed door into an open, inviting path forward. It says that the ability is coming, it's on its way. I just haven't arrived there yet, but I absolutely will with practice and time.
Exactly, Abel. And that shift in mindset is everything. The word yet turns a limitation into a learning journey. It turns a wall into a stepping stone. And it reminds you that where you are right now is not where you will always be. You are growing every single day, one small emotional coin at a time.
I want to encourage all of our listeners to try that right now. If there is something you feel you cannot do in English yet, Say that sentence to yourself with the word yet at the end. Notice how your whole body feels a little bit softer and a little bit more hopeful after adding that one tiny word.
Oh, that is such a wonderful invitation for our listeners, Abel. And here's a beautiful reflection moment for everyone listening right now. What is one feeling you haven't been able to express in English yet? Say it to yourself gently, add the word yet, and feel that small but real shift inside you.
I love that reflection moment, Anna, and it connects so naturally to another thing I want to share, which is something I call the no teacher behind the sofa idea. Because I think one of the biggest fears that stops people from talking about their feelings in English is the fear of making mistakes in front of others.
Oh, that is such a real and important fear to address, Abel. And I would love for you to explain the no teacher behind the sofa idea in your own words, because I think it is such a comforting and practical perspective for our listeners who are always worried about grammar and vocabulary mistakes.
Of course. So here's the thing. When you are in a real emotional conversation with a friend or a family member, there is no strict grammar teacher hiding behind the sofa with a red pen, ready to correct your vocabulary and give you a bad grade for using the wrong tense or the wrong word.
That image always makes me smile because it is so vivid and so true. And the moment you release the fear of being judged by your grammar in a personal conversation, something really beautiful happens. Your real personality starts to come through. Your warmth, your honesty, and your genuine desire to connect become visible.
That makes so much sense, Anna. And I think it is worth saying clearly and directly that real human connection is never built on perfect grammar. It is built on honesty, on warmth, and on the courage to say how you truly feel, even when the words are not perfectly organized or perfectly pronounced.
Beautifully said, Abel. And this leads us perfectly to our fifth vocabulary word of the day, which is the word peaceful. Because when you start to release the pressure of perfection and you begin to express yourself honestly, even in small ways, what you often feel afterward is a quiet, gentle sense of peace.
I love the word peaceful so much. It has such a calm and soft feeling to it, even when you just hear it spoken out loud. Anna, can you give our listeners a simple, clear definition of peaceful, something that captures both the sound and the meaning of that beautiful word in everyday life?
Yes, with pleasure. Peaceful means calm, quiet, and free from worry or stress. When you feel peaceful, your mind is not racing with anxious thoughts. Your body feels relaxed and easy. It's the feeling you get after a long, warm bath or after a quiet walk on a cool evening under soft, gentle light.
What a beautiful definition, Anna. And an example sentence for peaceful could be this. After I finally talked to my friend about how I was feeling, I felt so peaceful inside, like a heavy bag had been gently lifted from my shoulders. I think that image of the lifted bag really captures the relief perfectly.
That example is so warm and so relatable, Abel. And speaking of warm and relatable, I want to revisit the idea of sharing your feelings with the people around you. Because I know that even after understanding all of these analogies, some listeners might still feel hesitant about opening up, and that is completely okay.
Yes, and I think one of the most comforting things we can say to those listeners is that emotional openness does not have to be loud or dramatic or immediate. You don't need to sit someone down for a big, formal, emotional conversation the first time you try. You can start very, very small and very, very gently.
Exactly right, Abel. And that's the spirit of the stepping stones idea we talked about earlier. Small actions, small sentences, small moments of honesty. Each one is a coin. Each one is a stone across the river. And over time, those small moments create a life where emotional communication feels completely natural and easy.
And I want to add something that I find really helpful personally, Anna. Sometimes I don't even share my feelings with another person at first. Sometimes I write them down in a notebook just for myself, even one sentence a day. And that simple act of writing makes my feelings feel real, invisible, and manageable.
Oh, I absolutely love that practice, Abel. And it's such a powerful one. Writing your feelings down in a notebook, even just a single sentence, is a form of expression. It's you opening the lid of the water bottle, letting a little pressure out, and giving your emotions a place to live outside your busy mind.
Exactly. And it doesn't need to be fancy or long or beautifully written. It could literally just be 3 words. I feel tired. Or 4 words. I feel very happy. Or 5 words. I am anxious about tomorrow. Those tiny written sentences are emotional stepping stones that slowly build your confidence and your vocabulary every day.
I love that progression, Abel. 3 words, 4 words, 5 words, just growing slowly and gently. And now I want to share our sixth vocabulary word of the day, which is the word support. Because talking about feelings isn't just about releasing your own pressure, it's also about creating a space where others feel supported by you.
Oh, that is such a wonderful angle to look at this from, Anna, because emotional communication is truly a two-way street. When you're open about your feelings, you also give the people around you permission and comfort to be open about their own feelings. You become a source of support for others simply by being honest yourself.
Beautifully said. And for our listeners, the word support means to help someone feel less alone, less worried, and more capable. When you support someone emotionally, you listen to them, you show care, and you let them know that their feelings are valid and that they're not going through their experience by themselves.
And a simple example sentence for support could be this: My best friend always supports me when I feel sad. She listens without judging me, and just knowing she's there makes me feel so much stronger and so much less alone. That sentence captures the true meaning and the true gift of emotional support between people.
That's a genuinely touching example, Abel. And I think it's worth pausing for just a moment to ask our wonderful listeners this gentle question. Is there someone in your life right now who you could offer a little more emotional support to? Even a simple message saying, I'm here for you, can change someone's whole day.
That is such a beautiful and important question, Anna, and it really highlights how emotional communication is not just about our own well-being, it's also about the well-being of the people we love. Being emotionally present for others is one of the greatest gifts you can give as a friend, a partner, or a family member.
Absolutely, Abel. And this brings me to the last and one of my very favorite analogies of today's episode, which I call the slow friend analogy. Because I want to address something that many learners feel when they first start practicing emotional communication. They practice, they try, and they think, but why do I not feel better yet?
Oh yes, that impatience is so relatable. You do all the right things. You open the bottle, you step on the stones, you use clean, clear words, and then you wait for that wave of relief and peace to come rushing in immediately, and sometimes it just doesn't arrive right away, which can feel really discouraging.
And that is completely normal, Abel. So here is the slow friend analogy. Imagine you are taking a long, slow, gentle walk on a quiet afternoon. You are walking at a comfortable, easy pace, and somewhere behind you, a little further back on the road, your good friend is walking too, moving at a slower pace.
Okay, I can picture that so clearly, Anna. You are walking forward at your own pace, and your friend is back there walking too, just a little bit behind you. They have not caught up yet, but they are definitely on the same road, heading in the same direction and moving closer to you with every step.
Exactly. And in this analogy, you are the person who is practicing emotional communication, and the slow friend walking behind you is your inner peace and emotional clarity. You do not need to stop and wait anxiously. You keep walking forward, you keep practicing, and eventually your peaceful friend catches up and walks right beside you.
Oh wow, Anna, that analogy is genuinely beautiful, and I find it so comforting. It takes all of the pressure out of the journey. You do not need to force the peace to arrive faster. You just need to keep walking forward gently, consistently, and with patience, and trust that relief is always moving toward you from behind.
And that patience, that gentle forward movement, is what emotional growth truly looks like. It's not a dramatic transformation that happens overnight. It's a quiet, consistent, beautiful walk where you get a little clearer, a little lighter, and a little more comfortable with your feelings with every single passing day of practice.
Mm-hmm. That makes so much sense, Anna. And thinking about the slow friend analogy, I realize that sometimes we rush ourselves so hard in language learning and in emotional growth, too. We want to be fluent now. We want to feel better now. But slow, steady, consistent practice is always more powerful than rushing.
So true, Abel. And now let us talk about our seventh and final vocabulary word of the day, which is the word honest. Because underneath everything we've shared today, every analogy, every stepping stone, every pocket coin of practice, the one word that holds it all together is honesty. Simple, brave, beautiful honesty.
I think honest might be the most important word of this entire episode, Anna. And for our listeners who want a clear definition, can you explain what honest means in a simple and memorable way? Something that goes beyond just telling the truth and really captures the deeper meaning of honesty in emotional conversations.
Of course, being honest means sharing what you truly feel and think without hiding behind false words or comfortable masks. Emotional honesty means you say, I feel sad, when you feel sad, instead of automatically saying, I am fine when you're not. It takes courage, but it creates real, deep, lasting human connection.
And a beautiful example sentence for honest could be this. I decided to be honest with my partner and told them I was feeling worried about our future. That honest conversation brought us so much closer together and made our relationship so much stronger than it had ever been before that moment.
What a powerful and real example, Abel. And I think the reason honesty feels so transformative in relationships is exactly what we discussed with the two windows analogy. When you look through the clear, green garden window of trust, you see that honesty is not a risk. It's an invitation to deeper, warmer, more genuine connection.
Exactly right, Anna. And I feel like this whole conversation today has been such a complete and beautiful circle. We started by talking about the fear of sharing feelings, and we have moved all the way through to understanding that honest emotional sharing is one of the most powerful and human things we can ever do.
That is a perfect observation, Abel. And before we move into our closing summary, I just want to say something directly to every single person listening to this episode right now. Wherever you are in your English learning journey, whether you're just starting out or you've been practicing for years, your feelings matter, and they deserve to be expressed.
That is such a warm and important reminder, Anna. And here's a little thought for our listeners before we close. Learning to talk about your feelings in English is not separate from your language learning journey. It is one of the most powerful and practical parts of it because emotions are at the heart of every real conversation.
Absolutely true. And I think it's worth taking one more gentle breath right now as we move toward our closing thoughts. You have heard so many beautiful ideas today, from the water bottle to the stepping stones, from the clean knife to the slow friend, and from the magic word yet to the no teacher behind the sofa.
You know, Anna, I would love to give our listeners a warm and complete summary of everything we covered today so they leave this episode with a clear and practical picture of how to start talking about their feelings in English starting right now in their real daily life. May I do that?
Please do. I think our listeners would love to hear it all pulled together in one clear and comforting recap. Go right ahead and summarize everything beautifully for our wonderful community.
With pleasure, Anna. So here's everything we learned today. First, remember that your feelings are like water in a bottle. Keeping them trapped inside creates pressure. Opening the lid through honest words releases that pressure and makes you feel lighter. You don't need to pour out everything at once. Just a little sharing goes a long, beautiful way.
That is such a clear and comforting reminder, Abel. Please keep going. I know our listeners are taking notes right now, and this summary is going to be so valuable for them to revisit whenever they need a little encouragement to open up and share how they're truly feeling inside.
Absolutely. Second, remember the two windows. Fear makes you look through the cloudy window and assume people will judge you, but shifting your gaze to the green garden window shows you the truth, which is that honest sharing builds trust and brings warmth into your relationships. Choose the green garden window every time you can.
Oh, I love hearing the two windows again in the summary. It's such a simple but genuinely transformative shift in perspective. Please continue, Abel. Our listeners are following along beautifully, and I know they're connecting with every single point you're sharing in such a clear and easy to follow way.
Third, use stepping stones and pocket coins. You don't need to cross the entire emotional river in one leap. Spend 10 minutes a day on one small emotional action. Say one feeling out loud. Write one sentence in your notebook. Take one quiet, mindful pause. Small, consistent coins of practice build into great emotional fluency over time.
That is so practical and so achievable, Abel. The pocket coins idea is one of my personal favorites from today's conversation because it makes emotional practice feel light and joyful rather than heavy and overwhelming. Please share the next point for our listeners who are still following along so carefully and so warmly.
Fourth, use your clean knife. Choose simple, direct emotional words. Say, I feel anxious, instead of hiding behind complicated, vague sentences. Clear words cut through confusion and create real understanding instantly. And fifth, remember the magic word, yet. I cannot talk about my feelings in English yet. That one word transforms your limitation into a living, growing, hopeful journey forward.
Yes, and I will never get tired of saying how powerful that word yet truly is. It might be one of the smallest words in the English language, but it carries one of the biggest and most encouraging messages. You are not stuck. You are simply on your way. And that is always true for every learner.
Sixth, remember that there is no teacher behind the sofa in real emotional conversations. Nobody is grading your grammar or marking your accent. Real connection is built on warmth and honesty, not on perfect sentence structure. And seventh, walk gently with your slow friend. Peace and emotional clarity will catch up to you as long as you keep walking forward with patience and care.
That is a perfect and complete summary, Abel. You covered every single idea so beautifully and so clearly. And now I want to do something really special and invite our amazing listeners to be a part of our Leap English community in a very real and personal way today, right now in this moment.
Ooh, I love when we do this, Anna. Connecting with our listeners is always the most meaningful part of everything we do on this podcast. I know they are going to love this invitation, and I hope every single person listening right now takes a moment to participate, because their voice and their feelings truly matter.
Listeners, here is your simple and beautiful challenge for today. Go to the comments section of this episode and drop just one word or one simple sentence that describes how you feel right now. It could be, I feel calm. It could be, I feel motivated. It could be, I feel a little tired but happy. Any feeling, any word, any sentence is perfect.
And there is truly no wrong answer, no wrong grammar, and no judgment in those comments. It is a safe and warm space filled with learners just like you, who are all on the same beautiful journey of emotional expression and language growth. Your comment might even encourage someone else who needed to see exactly those words today.
That is so beautifully said, Abel. And remember, every comment you leave, every feeling you share, every English sentence you write is another stepping stone across your river and another small, shining coin of emotional practice added to your growing collection. We are so proud of every single one of you.
Absolutely. And we want you to know that we read your comments, and your words genuinely inspire us to keep creating content that helps you feel seen, supported, and encouraged on this English learning journey. So please do share how you feel in the comments. We truly cannot wait to read every single one of them.
And on that warm and wonderful note, I think it is time for us to wrap up today's episode of Leap English Podcast. Abel, it has been such a joy sharing this beautiful topic with you today, and I think our listeners are leaving this conversation with so much warmth, clarity, and practical inspiration to carry forward.
It has been an absolute joy, Anna.
And to every listener who made it all the way to the end of this episode, we want you to know that choosing to invest your time and your emotional well-being in your English communication is one of the greatest and most powerful decisions you can make for your life.
Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep speaking with confidence and ease. This is Anna.
And this is Abel, and you have been listening to the Leap English podcast by Mr. English Fluent Tutor. Bye-bye. Take care.
And hey, before you go, do not forget to click on the next video right now to keep your English language practice and your emotional wellness journey moving forward smoothly. We have so many more warm, helpful, and beginner-friendly conversations waiting for you. We'll see you in the next one very soon.